everybody. In the next three videos, I will review with you some of the key rhetorical moves for introduction sections for empirical research articles following the IMRAD format and show you some examples. So this first part is just going to review some of the key rhetorical moves, and then part 2 and part 3, the second and third video, will illustrate some of these rhetorical moves on two different examples. So let's get started. Here is the first slide I want to review with you. The general structure of an introduction section is what we call an inverted triangle. And the reason for that is that because at the beginning of the introduction, in an IMRAD article, writers are trying to stay very broad, right? They're trying to provide some general background. What do we already know about the subject? And then as you continue with your introduction, you'll start talking, or you will start talking about your knowledge gap. What's missing? What don't we know? Getting a little narrower. All the way to the tip of the inverted triangle, which is the accumulation at the ending of the introduction, the hypothesis, as well as a proposed plan to address the hypothesis, the research question, statement of purpose, which comes out of the research gap identified earlier in the introduction. In general, and you'll see this later on in our modules on methods and results, is that the IMRAD article structure is often described as an hourglass. So the beginning, the first triangle is the intro culminating at the end of the hypothesis. The middle here is the methods and results, which are very specific and very detailed and just about that particular study. And then the discussion section, you follow the opposite direction, regular triangles going from very narrow, your broad, the major findings, interpretation of the major findings of the data, towards its broad implications. Towards the end of the discussion section. But we'll cover that when we get to the discussion section. So for now, I want you to remember the inverted triangle structure for the introduction. So in general, let me put it this way, in most empirical research articles following the IMRAD format, you'll see 3 to 5 paragraphs into introduction. So the general advice is to stick to 3 paragraphs for your introduction, but sometimes you might need a little bit more to provide the context of your study, which is usually just 1 paragraph, but can be 2 or 3 paragraphs, right? So this part could be 1 to 3 paragraphs, but the rest should be about, approximately 1. So let me walk you through what goes into these different sections. It's based on what we've discussed in the previous slide. So the first 1 to 3 paragraphs should provide that general background, the context of your study, and really emphasizing what do we already know about this topic. What have major studies found? What have been some of the major breakthroughs, findings, treatments, if it's in a clinical context, and so on. And then the second part of an effective introduction, which could be paragraphs 2, 3, or 4, depending on the overall length, would be the research gap that you identify. What do we not yet know? So if it's about a certain treatment, what don't we know about this treatment? Where is it not effective? What needs to be investigated more? Which ultimately then leads to the last paragraph in the introduction, namely how you as the writers address the gap in your study and what did you do about it, right? Your hypothesis, as well as a short summary of how you went about proving your hypothesis or answering your research question, fulfilling your aims and objectives. Okay? Just one quick note on a paragraph length. I usually suggest when you're writing in a Word document that's double-spaced, right? Let's pretend that's where most of us write in double-spaced Word documents. You want to think about a good length of a paragraph to be between 1.5 to 3/4 of a page. If it gets longer than a 3/4 of a page, up to a page or more, you probably are starting to talk about different things in one paragraph. You really want to focus a paragraph on one particular topic. If you write less than half a page, you probably are not fully exploring the topic to its fullest. The only exception might be for this last paragraph. This could be shorter, where you're just presenting your hypothesis and how you went about proving this hypothesis, or answering your research question, fulfilling your aims, objectives, and so on. This could be potentially shorter. But these here, what I call narrative parts, where you're providing the context and identifying the research gap, should probably be about 1/2 to 3/4 of a page in a double-spaced Word document. All right? So let's clear this up, and let's go to some more tips and tricks or rhetorical moves for an effective introduction. Think about writing introduction for a general audience. Keep the jargon to a minimum. Of course, this depends on your audience and on the journal. If you're writing for a very specific journal, some jargon is probably required and needed. But I think it behooves us all as writers to think about the general public, a more general audience in writing an introduction. It will make for better writing and ultimately reading on the part of the readers. And your reviewers will thank you. Watch out for the paragraph length, right? Not too short, not too long. Follow the general roadmap that we've reviewed already. Move from the known to the unknown, culminating in your hypothesis or your research question or your aims or your objectives. And really make sure as you're writing to emphasize how your study fills the gaps. Maybe even emphasizing how it addresses limitations in existing studies if it's something that you're comfortable doing or you actually have, your results do that. Be crystal clear about stating your research question hypothesis. So this is not the time to try to wordsmith around. Be very clear. It's like we hypothesized that, or we investigated that. Our research question was, our aims. We had 3 aims, 1, 2, 3, whatever it is. Be very, very clear about it. We look at some examples that do that actually fairly successfully. Make sure you don't include too many details in your intro. So you want to focus on the big picture of your study's context. That's another really key part, I think, of an effective introduction. It provides the reader with the big picture, the context of your study and your investigation. And then I always suggest to not answer your research question. You do that actually in the results, in the discussion, right? When you discuss your results and interpret them and show the meaning of them. So make sure you stick with just stating the research question, how you went about to find, to get the results you were looking for, quick sentence on your methods, and that's about it. Some science writing guides do suggest, scientific writing guides suggest that you do provide a quick overview of your major finding, and I think you can do that in the context of stating a research question, but I would not give away too much at this point. Okay, so I will see you, or you will hear me in the next section. We're going to take a look at an example.